Hi, it's Rachel.
The Rachel is a haircut from the 90s that was more important than who the president was.
What's not to like?
The Rachel haircut was so ubiquitous, so huge.
You didn't even have to watch Friends and you knew what the Rachel was.
You're so pretty.
It was like my first real haircut.
It was just everywhere. I would have never done it, but it worked for a lot of people.
Good for me.
Suddenly, there's a fun, chunky highlight, at the carpool, and then you're in the supermarket, and then suddenly, somebody's mom, they got a couple of layers. They're kind of having their face framed, feeling a little bit Central Perk.
The Rachel haircut is when white culture peaked, and everybody in the country was like, let me look like this girl from Friends. Just okay show. I'm kidding. I love Friends. It's fun. Don't tell my other Black friends.
It really kind of symbolizes a time and a style that was so specific. Everybody copied it.
Is there any chance that you can look at this as flattering? I mean, she's doing it because she wants to be more like you.
Well, then, couldn't she have just copied my haircut?
So we know the Rachel looked elaborate, and it turns out the origin story of this haircut has just as many layers.
Friends, by the way, was a 90s show that blew up the world. And Jennifer Aniston, this was her breakout role.
It's really no wonder everyone wanted the Rachel. Friends was the biggest show on at the time, maybe ever. You know how many eyeballs were on that show and that hair?
Like nowadays, there is no Friends. 10 seasons, 20-something episodes per season. There was just so much of it that you could watch.
You were seeing young adulthood where you weren't living with your family and you weren't necessarily struggling. Even though they were supposed to kind of be struggling, they weren't really, not with that apartment.
Friends made New York seem accessible. Everybody was funny and cool and you could be friends with the chef.
I watched Friends because I thought it was very fantasy.
We wanted everything that the Friends characters had. We wanted their apartments, we wanted their friendships, their lives. So of course we'd want their hair too.
Oh, she's got gorgeous hair.
So what is the Rachel? Well, could there be a more iconic cut?
The Rachel haircut is a very severely layered bob of sorts.
You kind of have to do this hand motion when you talk about it.
The super tapered, frosted Rachel bob.
It's a very circular haircut that said to a lot of people, 90s waitress.
Let me take these cakes back because they're going to take that out of my paycheck.
It comes in here and you think, oh, that could be a haircut. But then it kind of comes from a different spot on the head, kind of more in. That could be a haircut too. Then we're starting back here.
Front and back!
Oh, wait, actually went past the shoulders. You didn't see that coming because that's another part of the haircut.
I mean, it's sort of like if you got highlights, but they left them on a little too long, and then you asked for a haircut, but they messed it up, so you went to a second hairstylist who tried to fix that.
The Rachel is the equivalent of wearing a skirt on top of pants.
Could I be wearing any more clothes?
I would call it the skirt of hairstyles.
An appropriate drag character while wearing the Rachel would be if you really had to speak to the manager immediately.
Looking at the pictures now, you're oh my God, that's so 90s.
The Rachel is quintessentially 90s, deeply 90s.
When I look at the Rachel, I hear, you've got mail.
Give me some flannel, some torn jeans, I'm good to go.
The Rachel watches My So-Called Life and listens to Oasis.
Chris McMillan created the Rachel. He's now a hairstylist to the stars and has worked with tons of celebrity clients like Jennifer Lopez, Reese Witherspoon, Julia Roberts, and Kim Kardashian.
He created both Gwyneth Paltrow and Brad Pitt's matching bobs, Kim Kardashian's hair for her wedding to Kanye West, Miley Cyrus's iconic blonde pixie cut, but of course, he's best known for working with Jennifer Aniston.
Jennifer has said that she met Chris during the first season of Friends when she was 24 and he was 29. Her manager at the time told her, "You have to do something with your hair. It's horrible."
When Michael Canale was the colorist behind the Rachel, she had like medium to dark brown hair. He added highlights from the roots to the end to make it look like it was highlighted by the sun. Then she went to Chris McMillan, and then the Rachel was born.
They now have been best friends and have worked together for 25 years.
See? He's her lobster. People don't talk about the highlights enough.
It's all about the colors. The colors are part of it. It's like highlighted and shaded so gradually, but done with such sleight of hand that you just think, oh, that's just what her hair looks like.
One thing I'd want to know from Chris is, where are those scissors that you first cut the original Rachel with? Because that's a piece of history. That should be in a museum.
Love museums, soaking up all the culture.
The timeline of when exactly the Rachel made its TV debut, it's kind of a bit of a gray area. That's because the haircut itself kept evolving.
In the pilot, Rachel doesn't have the Rachel, and the internet will have you believe it made its debut on April 6, 1995, in episode 20 of season 1, the one with the evil orthodontist. But honestly, there are glimpses of Rachel-esque hair for episodes and episodes before then.
By the end of season 1, the Rachel is in full force, and that continues for most of season 2. A Friends fandom wiki says the Rachel lasts until season 2, episode 19, the one where Eddie won't go. But again, if you look at the episodes that come after it, that hair is still pretty close to the Rachel.
By season 3, though, the Rachel was a thing of the past.
I am over you. And that, my friend, is what they call closure.
Back when the Rachel was on TV screens weekly, requests for a Rachel from Chris McMillan would come flooding in.
I mean, this is really becoming like a weird obsession thing.
So people would fly across the earth just to go to Chris McMillan and then ask for the Rachel.
And he would charge them $60, which with inflation probably is a normal haircut. However, what a missed opportunity. If these people are willing to fly and spend money on a ticket, you need to raise that price. I want this man to go back and Venmo request more money from all of those people.
Another interesting tidbit about the Rachel's origin story is that Chris McMillan, who's now sober, said in 2013 he was actually stoned when he gave Jennifer the Rachel. And then Jennifer corroborated the story on the Graham Norton show the next year.
He was loaded when he gave me the haircut. Stoned out of his mind.
The Rachel was born from a joint. And I can see that. It was kind of flipping everywhere, and he kind of looks like he used beer cans to roll it up.
It's kind of a stoner haircut.
So that's the complete story of how the Rachel was created. Or is it?
They don't know that we know they know we know.
Chris actually told Allure in February of 2021, wait for this, quote, "The truth is, I didn't invent the haircut for Rachel Green."
What?
He said his memory of the haircut was when Ward, who he said was a rock god of hair, gave a Rachel-esque shag to Barry Smither, a big model in the 90s.
Barry what?
Then Chris gave a similar haircut to Cameron Diaz, and only then did he give it to Jen. That's when Pandora's box opened and everyone had to have the Rachel.
The Rachel's been us up for years, girl.
He said the truth is that rather than inventing it for Rachel, he was just able to convince his client and friend Jen to add some layers and try something different.
Going through the history of the Rachel, what really stands out is just how many times Jen has said she dislikes that haircut.
Okay, and we'll be here hating you.
It really had like a shape to it that was like too distinct for me.
Jennifer told Allure in 2011 that even though she loves Chris, quote, "He's the bane of my existence at the same time because he started that damn Rachel, which was not my best look." She also said, quote, "How do I say this? I think it was the ugliest haircut I've ever seen."
I love this. Jennifer Aniston comes out publicly against the Rachel 9 years after Friends is off the air. Finally, the truth Exposed.
She even commented on how difficult the haircut was to maintain while presenting Chris with InStyle's Hairstylist of the Year award in 2018.
Used to call it the Rachel years when I got that haircut. That was like, wow, this is amazing. And then I was totally left with this like Greek frizzy mop on my head because I had no idea how to do what he did. No one seems to know how to do what Chris does. And I figured out that's called creating job security. So well done, Chris, on that.
Jennifer also told Marie Claire in 2013 that the Rachel was horrible and high maintenance.
Ooh, that bad, huh?
She said it took 3 brushes and was like doing surgery, and that she would curse Chris every time she had to blow dry.
How do you expect me to grow if you won't let me blow?
Honestly, if you have layers in your hair and they're not blown out, it's just the most ugly, geometric, disgusting thing you've ever had. So that's what girls were going around and getting.
This is torturous. Okay, that's it. I'm coming out publicly against the Rachel. Now.
Thank you so much.
He's basically guaranteed himself a job for life.
Chris McMillan wasn't stupid. He's like, I'm gonna give you a haircut that is so complex to recreate. You will have to keep me hired for the rest of your career. And guess what? He's still her hairstylist. Think about it.
God, you're brilliant.
Chris told Marie Claire, I know that was Jen's least favorite hairstyle because I hear about it every time I style her hair.
How could you do this to me? This was all your idea.
Could you imagine hearing that every time? They work together a lot.
Yeah, it's like, hey, hun, I hate that haircut that you gave me 20 years ago. So like today I just kind of want like a cleanup. Maybe lighter for the summer. Maybe she's scared every time she sits down in his chair that he's gonna give it to her again. There's that little part of her.
Jennifer said on a radio show in 2013 that if she had to pick between having the Rachel for the rest of her life or shaving her head just once, she would shave her head once, definitely.
The fact that Jennifer Aniston would shave her head instead of wearing the Rachel for a year is really telling.
I bet she has a perfect shaped head. I bet she'd look gorgeous.
Now go shave that head.
Jen has also gone on record saying that she hated her famous bob haircut. So don't feel too bad, the Rachel. At least you have some company.
Even though we know Jennifer hated the cut, at the time, back in the mid-90s, everyone and their mom wanted to get the Rachel, even outside of the US.
11 million British women by 2010 had tried to get this haircut. I bet you it was 1 to 2 out of all of those actually pulled it off. And one of them was probably Jennifer Aniston visiting London.
It happened in London. In London?
11 million women have tried out the Rachel. I'm speechless.
This is totally unprecedented.
It really clanged on to America in ways that are strange, girl. There are people I'm sure there were people in Britain that had nice haircuts.
Every decade has an iconic shag, whether it's Jane Fonda in Clute, Rachel from Friends, Justin Bieber, or Pete Wentz. You have an iconic shag for every era.
In the 90s, everyone wanted the Rachel.
I think people projected the character onto the hairstyle, and they're like, well, if I'm rocking the Rachel, I will probably embody the confidence of Rachel, which is just like not true.
It is funny because it's like, okay, we see Rachel, we see that she's gorgeous, we see that she has everything that we want to have. How can we get there? The hair. And it's like, oh no, honey, the reason that hair is so iconic is because Jennifer Aniston is a star.
Jennifer Aniston has amazing hair. So I feel like any way her hair is, you're gonna wanna copy it.
What's going on with your hair?
If people in our country were as obsessed with like world economics as we are with Jennifer Aniston's hair, like I think we would have solved world hunger.
Hey, Laura,
Yeah.
you know what, just something new I've been working on.
What is it?
Little tease here.
Yeah.
Something to do with hair.
Hair?
Mm-hmm.
Why?
You wouldn't think that would be an immediate
No.
go-to?
Well, I mean, like, you have hair on your head. But whatever, I have hair. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
What makes
because
you?
because over the years I've kind of been, my hair has been a thing.
There were 10 epic seasons of Friends, and the Rachel was in the earlier seasons. And throughout the entire process of the show, there were many different Jennifer Aniston haircuts, but none stuck like the Rachel.
When the Rachel finally disappeared, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief.
It's not like Jennifer Aniston was the only actor on Friends to have well-styled hair, but the other characters just couldn't hold a curling iron to the Rachel.
I wonder if anyone ever went into the salon asking for the Ross or the Joey.
I think the reason we talk about the Rachel and not the Monica or the Phoebe is because if you look back on it, Monica's hair did kind of turn into the Rachel, but it was already the Rachel. She was the Rachel with bangs. Phoebe's hair was just like kind of long. It just wasn't a new groundbreaking look. And also, let's be real, Jennifer Aniston blew up.
Hi, me.
We've talked about people recreating the Rachel, but what's interesting is this really highlights the phenomenon in our culture of people going to their hairdresser and trying to look exactly like a celebrity. And it almost never works out. Why do we do this?
That's Dudley Moore. I said I wanted it like Demi Moore. Oh my God.
Whenever I've gone into a salon with a celebrity's photo, it's also like, well, not only do I want the hair, but I also want like their face, their life, their bone structure.
Truly, the other day I brought a photo of Big Sean to my barber and was like, make me look like him. And there was that moment of being like, oh, I can make you look like you with his haircut. And I was like, that's enough.
The last time I took in a picture of a celebrity's hair to have a wig made of it, it was B. Arthur from the Golden Girls. Why isn't that a hairstyle?
My mom is a hairdresser, so in the 90s, she gave many Rachel haircuts because it was probably the most requested haircut of her job.
I remember going in to a hairstylist, Regis Hair Salon in the Willow Grove Mall. I said, can I have the Rachel? And the hairdresser said, absolutely not. The only other time people said no to me as a kid were the Rachel and trying to get McDonald's hash browns after breakfast time. Listen, I want, for the sake of the show, to say that it was more devastating to not get that haircut. But as someone who just scarfed down 2 McDonald's hash browns today, the hash browns were devastating. Devastating.
The first haircut that I got after my long 90s hair was a Rachel, but it didn't turn into a Rachel. It was a Joan Jett.
It wasn't just regular people and Friends fans who got the Rachel. Celebs tried it too.
Stop the madness!
Celebrities getting the Rachel is so funny because it's like, you're gonna see her.
Celebrities getting the Rachel is a cop-out. It's like it's allowing them to not work hard enough to get the them. That's what they should be aiming for.
She could be you.
It's sort of humanizing in a way. Like, oh, celebrities, they like just as easily succumb to fads as we do.
Also, it wasn't cute. And she said it wasn't cute. Listen to Rachel.
It's just not worth it.
Here's a fun fact you might not have known. Jessica Alba actually had the Rachel when she was a young actress just starting out.
It was like my first real haircut. I got it early on. No, I think it was before Friends. I was like, 13? I was doing a TV show called The New Adventures of Flipper, and I played a character named Maya. And given the circumstances, I was quite coiffed. She was like a island kid, bohemian, definitely had a blowout every day.
She was in Flipper, which, by the way, you can't have a haircut that does the thing that's the name of the project you're working on. Flipper with a flippy haircut? No.
A shag in general should either be for sort of a woman in her 20s or a woman in her 60s. There's something about it that there's no real in between.
The Rachel is the kind of haircut that you see from a teacher really trying to capture their youth, not the actual youth.
The look didn't necessarily go with the character so much.
Another celebrity who tried the Rachel was Deborah Messing.
Hello.
Before she started on Will and Grace, Deborah was on this show called Ned and Stacy, which was actually on at the same time as Friends. The producers, they thought the key to Friends' success was the Rachel, so they had Deborah try it out as well.
So then she went to Jen's hairstylist, got the Rachel, and surprise, surprise, it was a whole debacle to try and recreate it.
Her hair just said, no, it's too humid, not today.
Deborah said they literally tried for 3 hours to straighten her hair like the Rachel, but it was so full and poofy that it just looked like a mushroom.
Do you notice the mushroom-esque?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was because it literally, as I was acting, it was growing.
Different hair types are going to react to different hairstyles. So if you have really curly hair like Deborah Messing, it's going to be really hard to recreate a Rachel because you have to flat iron everything and it's a lot.
Oh my God, I feel like everyone had the Rachel now that I look back.
Tyra Banks is Rachel. I mean, this is the classic Rachel just with a little bit more forehead, and I'm not mad. Tyra makes everything look good.
Honestly, very cute. It should be called the Tyra.
Christina Aguilera did the Rachel. Voulez-vous coucher avec moi, Rachel? Yes.
Wow, Kerry Washington. She's so beautiful. I'm not even looking at her hair.
It's a scandal.
Ashley Simpson. See, this feels like a little like gothy version.
It turns out she wasn't actually doing the Rachel. She was lip syncing.
The Ashley Simpson Rachel is like actually my version of the Rachel, which is the Joan Jett.
Scarlett Johansson gives us the Rachel.
Okay, so she did multiple styles of the Rachel. Seems like a fanatic.
Meg Ryan did the Rachel.
I have an issue with this being called the Rachel because Meg Ryan had her own iconic haircut, which was like if the Rachel had just stopped here and then they let it like do its thing.
The fact that she had a famous haircut and was still rocking other people's famous haircuts, that's very cute.
Maybe the Meg Ryan cut walked so that the Rachel could soar.
Rihanna did the Rachel. Ah, I am shooketh. This was a far-reaching phenomenon.
Obviously, she can pull it off. She can pull off anything.
I would not call this the Rachel. Maybe it could be her sister, Rochelle. I feel like if we're going to call these haircuts the Rachel, they need to contain 3 things: layers, highlights, and the weird like bang opening.
Rachel McAdams, this is Rachel-esque for sure.
Jennifer Lopez with the Rachel. Her face instantly takes it out of the Rachel territory and just makes it hot. I mean, look at this face. She looks great.
Yes, Kelly Ripa, this is absolutely the Rachel. I think if you're Kelly Ripa in 2001 and you need America to fall in love with you, I would get this haircut. And guess what? It worked.
She feels very regular, very like news anchory.
Kelly Clarkson? Okay. Yeah, see, this makes sense. I mean, she was the contestant on American Idol. Like, she was ready. She was like, make me look like the girl from Friends.
A moment like this.
Kelly Clarkson, icon of the chunky highlight. And I don't think I realized until now that maybe she got that from Jennifer Aniston. The 2 celebrities that embody the Rachel the most are the Kellys. It's a very Kelly thing to do.
Chris McMillan has actually said that he still sees the Rachel on TV today.
Oh, this is unbelievable.
Though the cut has been adapted for now, aka there's less volume on top.
Do people still get the Rachel? Oh my God. Why?
It's not sweet. It's not cute.
Fashion is cyclical. Hair is cyclical. People are going to want to have repeats. Every 20 years, fashion repeats. And that the 90s hair is really having a moment now.
Permission to veto.
Yes, please.
That should be like a picture hanging up in the stylist salon that says, do not give this haircut.
I think when people get the Rachel now, actually it would be a really fresh look. I think what problems happen is when you try to make the Rachel your own and then you shorten it and shorten it and shorten it and then it becomes a Kate Gosselin, which twists and turns into a Karen.
My advice to you, if you want the Rachel haircut, don't try to get the exact haircut because you're not going to get it. Okay. That was a very specific thing that needed Jennifer Aniston's hair. Just do what Selena Gomez does and recreate it. Add it to another icon's hair. Make it better. You know, make it your own.
My main question is, does Jennifer Aniston own layers? Because if so, then probably every woman in America has the Rachel.
Listen, layers are never gonna go out of style, but just like, let's do it within reason. Let's be reasonable.